Pleased to have here on the program his new film, My Dad's Christmas Date, is in theaters and on demand today. He plays the role of the aforementioned dad. He is Jeremy Piven. How are you, Jeremy?
Good. How are you, sir?
It's
been
good.
a minute.
It has been a minute. Let's start with the sports. Let's do that.
Let's do it, man.
Your thoughts on your Chicago Bears. I give you the floor on the Bears, Jeremy.
Well, I just got a call from them, and I have a tryout for offensive guard because we're 3 out of 5 down right now.
Yep.
They need a 5'9" Jewish offensive guard apparently, and I am ready. Rich, as you know, I am ready.
Yes, indeed.
You've seen me.
I have seen you. I've never seen you, on some sort of running, pulling situation. I've never seen that, but I'm going to trust you. You have that first step ability, Jeremy.
No, sir. If you remember correctly,
yes,
you were there. We had a big flag football game that was televised live on ESPN.
Yes.
And I have great lateral movement. I need to celebrate myself for a moment. So.
Well, your coach, Matt Nagy, does have that phrase "be you," and if that's who you are, then I think you need to get to Tennessee right away because that's going to be a tough one coming up this weekend for your Bears.
It will be, listen. It will be a tough one, but isn't this one of those moments where, a player on the practice squad who has been the best player on every field he's ever walked onto gets his moment? Isn't this the time? I'm confused.
Are you the Rudy? You're the Rudy of the 2020 Chicago Bears is essentially what you're saying right now.
No. What I'm saying is there is not me. We've moved on.
Okay, we've moved on from that bit. I'm sorry. No,
it's all right.
Okay.
I'm just saying our offensive line, is challenged, and there's some guys that are going to be stepping up. And Trubisky, has been moved to backup, and he played one play, got injured. It happens.
I don't mean to laugh, but I mean it is kind of crazy in that regard. But I mean, it is like watching teeth get pulled. This offense trying to get some points on the board, Jeremy. But you never know. This thing can change in a heartbeat, and Foles might be the guy to do it. You just never know.
Listen, he's a drilling quarterback. Bears have an incredible defense, so anything is possible.
Jeremy Piven here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, so are you in a fantasy team, or just you watch the Bears and that's basically about it?
Well, I'm a fan of reality. I don't need to fantasize about football players.
Nice.
But if you want to spend, every waking moment, then I celebrate you.
Okay.
For doing that. I don't do a lot of fantasy.
Okay, very good. So you're more steeped in reality during this crazy ass quarantine or staying at home. What of yours from your work, television, movies that you flipped the television on, you saw on the screen, like, oh, I forgot I did that. Does that happen any point in time last several months?
I don't ever go, I forget, but the other night, they were showing Old School on CBS. It was like the Sunday night movie they're bringing back. And, it's one of those movies that never gets old. It was great to see.
So Old School was actually on network television as a Sunday night movie that actually happened?
It happened.
That's amazing. Holy crap. Some of the things I want to talk with you about before we get to your film is, when was the last time you did watch an episode of Entourage? When was the last time that happened?
Well, I don't know exactly how long it's been, but what's interesting is people in real time keep reaching out about it. When are you guys coming back? What's going on? We miss you. And then they'll send me, on like Instagram stories, they'll send me scenes. A therapy scene of Ari Gold and Mrs. Ari, where Ari is losing his mind, and I kind of it's being brought to my attention all the time. I think because people miss it, which makes me feel good that we had an impact. But I think also in these times where everyone is on their best behavior, that represents a time when. It was an authentic show. Ari, the character of Ari, was an equal opportunity offender. And, it was just simpler times where we were having a good laugh and we weren't necessarily worried about who we were offending.
Who was the best athlete guest star that as for an actor? Who had the best chops, Jeremy, that showed up on that show?
Chops. That's a great question.
Thank you.
The best chops as an actor. Well, I'll tell you this: when Mike Tyson, when he showed up, he had a very specific idea of how he wanted to play it. And then he and I he's the great Mike Tyson, the youngest heavyweight champion, and he's making his return.
Yes.
As you know.
Yes.
Because, the gods of war have ignited my ego, which is fantastic. The gods of war have ignited. I think he needs to sit on a couch and play God of War and maybe ignite his barbecue. I don't know. But he's back and we're excited. He ultimately was kind of the best performer because he and I worked together and I got him improvising, and then he just ultimately crushed it.
I've got Jeremy Piven here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's talk about My Dad's Christmas Date. You and Jolie Richardson and Natalie Cox and Anna Walton. I give you the floor on. Did you shoot this in London, or it was just this was all shot there, right?
Just outside, a couple hours outside of London.
Okay.
Is this brilliant town called York, and it's I don't know if they wrote it with this town in mind, but it's this magical place where it has castles, and it's authentic, and it's beautiful, and it feels like Christmas. And I play a guy who lost his wife, and he's trying to connect with his daughter, and, they haven't dealt with their grieving process, and so it's awkward, and he's trying too hard, and he's a mess. And the daughter takes it upon herself to try to get her old man to kind of connect with love, and she goes, and she's very cheeky and goes online and sets him up on all these dating sites, and suddenly he's on a date and he doesn't even know it, and hilarity ensues. It's one of those movies that you think it's going to be one thing and it becomes another. It's really funny and edgy and heartfelt, and I'm pretty proud of it.
And again, it's My Christmas Date is in theaters and on demand today with you, Jeremy Piven. Before I let you go, some may not know or remember because they're too damn young, that Entourage was not your first HBO foray. You were an integral part of one of the greatest shows in the history of television, The Larry Sanders Show. What was it like being around Garry Shandling for all of that, Jeremy?
It was really cool. To make a sports analogy, it would have been like being on the Bulls in the 90s.
Yeah.
I knew it because I did grow up in Chicago, and I grew up on the stage, and I am a stage actor. And so I had a reference for comedy at Second City and all that stuff. I started with a guy named Chris Farley a million years ago in the Second City touring company. So I had a reference for comedy. So I knew how good he was and how good that show was. And I was a guy who was coming off the bench. I was like Craig Hodges on the Chicago Bulls. And so I knew that I was surrounded by greatness, and I was lucky to be there, and I just soaked it all up, and it was incredible. And he was a genius, and that show launched original programming on HBO. So I was incredibly lucky to be around it.
There is, every second of that show is like a drop of honey on the planet. Like literally every scene, every word, just you and the rest of that cast was just perfection. Rip Torn was crazy, right? I mean, was he totally nuts being around him on that set?
Well, first of all, God rest his soul.
Right.
And he was, he was a last of a dying breed. Let's say that. I mean, he was from Texas, and he was obviously, this master thespian, but a guy that was not afraid of trouble in any way, shape, or form. I remember one time he came back from lunch, and he had taken off his toupee and was shaking out what looked like glass out of his toupee. And he said that someone had shattered his windshield, and he got into some altercation. And he just got the windshield out of his toupee and just put it right back on and just got back into the scene without missing a beat.
That is definitely a great Rip Torn story. You got a good Farley one, since you just mentioned that you broke in with him?
Well, Farley was one of these guys, like Rip Torn, who was such an authentic character that lived his life to the fullest. And so we would perform at Second City, and then you would go out until 1:00 and you would drink. And Chicago is open till 4:00 and 5:00 on Saturday nights. And so on a Saturday night, you'd go to the pub and do your thing and crush it, and then go to sleep. But I just remember seeing him going to the gas station to get a mac and cheese at dawn, and he just played through, and I just tapped out. And
he played through. It's a great way to put it. He played through with a morning mac and cheese from a gas station.
Yeah, he did.
No doubt.
He did it, and he was also quite an athlete, as you could tell. He was a rugby player at Loyola, and he was about a biscuit over 300 pounds, but he was still very flexible.
Yeah, you could see he was definitely nimble. Hey, Jeremy, speaking of nimble, I look forward to watching you create some holes for David Montgomery on Sunday against the Tennessee Titans.
That sounds both enticing and dirty and awkward.
So let me put it this way. I look forward to you pass blocking for Nick Foles on Sunday against Tennessee. And then everybody can check out My Dad's Christmas Date in theaters and on demand today. Thanks for the call, Jeremy. You take care.
Thank you, sir. Take care of yourself.
Right back at you. That's Jeremy Piven.
Bears.
Go Bears. There you go.